Is time needed between a PED bulk and a Clen/DNP cut? I can just tell by the way that you worded this question that you think that you just throw drugs at everything. Every phase is about what drug you get to use in that phase. Here's the thought. Try actually dieting. Just diet, okay? Don't use DNP, don't use Clen. Just go on an actual diet and count your macros and try sticking to a diet. That would be my suggestion. Instead of using dangerous drugs that you probably have no business ever using DNP. And Clen is something that should be saved for the back half of a prep when it actually helps. I have started training really early in the morning. How important is a pre-workout meal? Is it good enough to just have a large post-workout meal? A pre-workout meal is quite important for performance and hydration. And I would, at the bare minimum, have a shake of some kind, like whey. And you can definitely experiment with adding to fast digesting carbs to that as well, so that you aren't having this long period where you're training with no dietary amino acids in the bloodstream, as that's just going to needlessly risk potential loss of protein, and the lack of carbs and potentially the lack of hydration could cost you performance in the gym. So I would consider a shake at the bare minimum. Is Jokic winning the championship the final stamp on the validity of advanced stats? Seems like a lot of people use him as an example of how they can be misleading. I don't think so, man. And here's the thing about advanced stats that I just don't think we're ever going to overcome. The average sports fan is not very smart. Just flat out, they're not. They don't understand advanced math. To them, you're just spitting out some nonsense nerd number. And they don't even understand things like points per possession. Okay? They just go, that boy can play. He can score. He can hit the three. They just start listing skills. So I don't think we'll ever get past that barrier with some people. I'm dealing with tennis elbow. What should I do? Get rid of any and all exercises that aggravate the tendonitis. Develop a relationship with a PT that can give you corrective exercises. And in the meantime, I would deload to help get rid of the tendonitis. If a week of deloading doesn't get rid of it, then tack on a week of active rest, which means no gym for a week. And when you come back, introduce movements that were offenders at lower intensities, meaning a lower percentage of 1RM and lower frequencies, and consider using better tempos and pauses to control the absolute load. Don't ignore the PT part. How is Mitchell Hooper so strong for his size? I know it's a silly question. Yes, it is a silly question, man, because this is just like the nature of sports, right? How is Usain Bolt so fast? How does so-and-so athlete jump so high? Because they literally train for it, and they have exceptional genetics for that physical quality. You combine those two things and you get phenomenal performance. If the black race is more physically gifted than others, why aren't they dominating in bodybuilding, powerlifting, and strongman? First of all, race doesn't exist, okay? That's no different than grouping people based on hair color or eye color. With information that we have from stuff like the Human Genome Project, we now know that there are more genetic intra-racial differences than there are genetic inter-racial differences, meaning that people with the same skin color have a wider variety of genetic differences than the differences across people of all skin colors. It is West Africans specifically, or people of West African descent, have a greater likelihood, genetically speaking, to have genes that make them good at power-based sports, speed and power-based sports. So when you're talking about a strength-based sport, which is static, that's not even the gene pool that we're talking about when we are talking about people of West African descent. And it is important that we talk about people of West African descent because, for example, people of East African descent are often very skinny and they're the best marathoners and long-distance runners in the world. So it's not just black people, it's people of West African descent. So now that I've successfully removed the racist overtones to this question, we can actually get into the merit of it. Phil Heath, Ronnie Coleman, and Lee Haney won a combined 23 Olympias. 3 black competitors, more than all other competitors combined. So I have no idea what you're talking about as far as the sport of bodybuilding is concerned. Black athletes have dominated. Second, if we were to take all the American football players and basketball players, sports that actually make millions of dollars and that are predominantly represented by blacks of West African descent, and put them into tiny little sports like powerlifting and strongmen that most people don't give a shit about, they would dominate the fuck out of all of them with ease. Last but not least, you need to understand statistics. Just because someone is of a certain genetic heritage, it may make them more likely to be an outlier in terms of physical characteristics, but it's no guarantee. Just like it's no guarantee that someone of Indian or Asian or white heritage is going to be a bad athlete or have bad physical genetics. It's all about probability. FYI, this was a racist question. Does it make more sense to take multivitamins in a fat loss phase due to lower food variety? There's absolutely no reason that you can't get all of your micronutrients in while you're on a diet. I do that very easily, even with as low as 2,500 calories a day. There's no reason that you shouldn't either. Second, no, it doesn't make sense because the vast majority of multivitamin products are absolute garbage. They are formulated in such a way as to save costs and not for maximum absorption. If you actually got a multivitamin product that was formulated for maximum absorption and efficacy, it would be expensive as. So again, I would highly recommend just eating your micronutrients and tracking them on chronometer.com. Can squatting with fatigued adductors cause more knee cave? I'm not gonna say that's impossible, but in my experience, knee cave is not caused by quote unquote weak adductors. More often than not, when you see any kind of a knee cave in a free weight squat, you are also going to see the hips pull back, which means that leverage is being shifted off of the quads and onto the hips and the hip extensors in general. Oftentimes, the knee cave just facilitates the hips being able to move backwards and taking load off of the quads. My adductors have always been my best body part, and yet I always had knee cave free squatting. So I don't think this is the case, no. Are upright rows more front delt than medial delt? No, but here's the thing. All heads of the delt work together to abduct the arm, right? So even the front delt is going to be working to some degree, even in a lateral raise. So no, because the primary function of the side delt is to abduct the arm when the shoulder is in internal rotation, which it is during an upright row. When you are a beginner or an intermediate, I honestly don't give a shit where you feel the exercise. Like, it's impossible to use reasonable technique on an upright row or a lateral raise and get much, much stronger on it. Say add 50% or 70% to the loads that you're currently using with match technique and not have your side delts get bigger. This is where you feel things is a concern for very advanced lifters who have lagging parts. How could one best program training and nutrition around clubbing 1 to 2 days a month, 40 to 50,000 steps and no sleep? Well, let's just get this right out of the way, right? There's nothing that you can do to mitigate the damage from something that extreme. Staying up all night with no sleep, drinking and doing drugs is going to have a huge deleterious effect on your training no matter what you do. That said, the same rules apply when you're awake, right? Try not to go more than 5 hours without a protein feeding. Before you go to bed, maybe eat a big meal on those days. And you're probably not going to want to train the day after you do that. Maybe not even 2 days after you do that. No matter what, don't expect much progress. Can you explain your take on arm day? I literally talked about this like 2 Q&As ago. But okay, I'm not going to hold any fucking punches though. None. I have no problem with arm days of people who are at the right level of training advancement. If you've gotten to the point where you can close grip bench press 315 to 405 for reps and your triceps are still lagging, yeah, you know what? Maybe it makes some sense to have an arm day. If you're at the point where you can curl a plate and a half for reps, where you can preacher curl the 50-pound dumbbells for hypertrophy reps and your biceps are still lagging, you know what? Yeah, maybe it makes sense to have an arm day. But the vast majority of you talking about arm days have 15-inch arms. You haven't been training for 5 years. You're weak as piss on all movements, and you don't have lagging arms. You just don't even train properly, and you haven't gotten strong. That's a problem. Like, a lot of you just want to skip steps. You look at what some of the top lifters are doing, and they have specialization cycles and whole days dedicated to weak body parts, but you're skipping the whole part where they trained for 10 years using basic, boring progressive overload, where they got 8 hours of sleep every single night, where they actually hit their protein goals every day, where they tracked their calories and hit their calories every day, and they got strong on the basic movements and looked at certain body parts and went, that didn't work. But you guys haven't even done the part where you get strong on the basic movements. You're just going, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to skip that part. I'm just going to skip the part where I do a linear progression on barbell or dumbbell curls. And I'm just going to jump straight to the conclusion that I have weak and lagging arms and that the only thing that can fix this is an arm day. In reality, you just need to go back and do normal, boring training, getting enough sleep, having proper nutrition, and do it for like 5 years. And watch how you magically have no more lagging arms. Why isn't there a male bodybuilding division where you only get down to 9 to 12% body fat so competitors don't castrate themselves? I don't know if you've noticed this, but the viewership for normal natural bodybuilding, which is super lean, is low enough as it is. This doesn't happen because no one wants to see it. Listen, bodybuilding is a fringe sport. It used to be this underground culture. It's a niche thing. It's very, very extreme by nature. If you don't like that and you don't want to participate in that, you really don't have to. And that's honestly where like modern Instagram culture is at right now anyway, right? Like you want to look at people who have the best physiques at 9 to 12%, just scroll through Instagram and look at all the influencers because that's what most people want to do. You can lift weights and get lean and do the whole process as well as you can without ever having to compete. Some of the best lifters I know don't compete and have no interest in competing. If you don't like bodybuilding, don't do bodybuilding. It's okay. Why are muscle mommies so fine? All right, questions that weren't meant to be taken seriously, but I'm taking them seriously anyway for 500, please. I think there's a socialization process that happens in any co-ed activity where you're working so hard and striving towards certain values or a certain aesthetic, you start to subconsciously ascribe more value to those values or those aesthetics. And you see this really with both sexes, right? Like female physique competitors date a disproportionately large percentage of male physique competitors and vice versa. And I guess that's just interesting to note because amongst the general population, bodybuilders of both sexes are considered kind of gross, especially when at the extremes. So I do think that there is an aesthetic change that happens due to socialization. Am I limiting my overall size gains by not doing deadlifts and back squats? I prefer to do front squats and RDLs for recovery economy. So in the case of front squats versus back squats, you are 100% limiting your gains because front squats are very often limited by mobility, core strength, the thoracic extensors, and basically everything besides your quads. They are not a good movement for hypertrophy for the vast majority of people in my experience. They really only work well for people who are built for them, meaning very long torso and short legs, and excellent ankle mobility. As far as RDL versus deadlift, that one's a little bit more dubious, but I would argue yes, and not because deadlifts are better than RDLs, but because the way you wrote this tells me that your mentality is wrong. Talking about recovery, well, how strong are you? I didn't have to start doing RDLs over deadlifts until I was deadlifting 6+ plates for hypertrophy reps on a regular basis. That's when a recovery economy became a problem. I doubt you're that strong, but maybe you are. Alrighty, folks, that's going to be the end of the Q&A today. So if you enjoy the Q&As, please consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. If anybody wants to work with me directly for coaching, I still have a few slots for half-price coaching, so you can just shoot me a DM on Instagram or find my email in the description box on YouTube, which is where you can also find links to my ebooks, my bio on Instagram, and the description box on YouTube. All right. I believe that is all of my usual advertisements. So I will be back in the gym on Tuesday to do another full body workout. So until then, folks, have a good one, and I guess I would say enjoy your week, but we got Monday coming up, and who likes Monday? Anyway, have a good Monday, I guess. If it's possible, do it. Peace.